In a crime-ridden dystopian future where corporations have more power than governments, a man is brutally murdered, only to be resurrected as a machine, stripped of his humanity, his memories, and his very identity. What was once a devoted officer of the law is now nothing more than a tool, a product stamped with a corporate logo, built to enforce the rules of those who profited from his suffering. His journey is one of violence, tragedy, and revenge as he fights to reclaim the soul that was ripped away from him. And despite its hard R rating, excessive gore, and satirical take on the horrors of unchecked capitalism, the film somehow became the basis for a toy line marketed to kids. This was a common theme back in the 80s and early 90s. Ultra-violent, adult-targeted films inexplicably turned into Saturday morning cartoons and children's merchandise. Aliens, a horror action movie about space marines getting slaughtered by a hive of acid-spewing, skull-crushing monsters, had an entire toy line for kids. Terminator 2, a movie about a machine sent back in time to assassinate a child, had an arcade game and action figures. Even Rambo, a movie about a traumatized Vietnam vet who violently tears through small-town America, got a cartoon series. It was a bizarre time, one where movie studios seemed to think that just because a film had a cool-looking main character, it automatically meant kids would want the toys. Welcome to the Snake Pit, where we're full of bile and venom. I'm your host, Snake Daemon, and today we're looking at the RoboCop TV series, an attempt to take one of the most violent, satirical, and brutally dystopian films ever made and turn it into a kid-friendly police procedural. Now, to give credit where it's due, the show actually had some legitimate talent behind it. The pilot episode was adapted from a discarded RoboCop 2 script, Corporate Wars, written by the same guys who wrote the original movie, Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner. That means, in a weird way, this show gave us the sequel we never got. The series attempted to expand on RoboCop's world, shifting its focus to a more serialized format rather than a self-contained movie. Instead of being an ultra-violent action spectacle, it leaned more into the corporate intrigue and sci-fi procedural elements. It was a chance to flesh out the world of Delta City and the constant corruption within OCP. But the problem was obvious from the start. The show was aimed at a younger audience, which meant no blood, no over-the-top violence, and toned-down satire. They kept the corporate villainy, the cyberpunk themes, and the dystopian setting, but stripped out everything that made the franchise stand out in the first place. Instead of ultra-violent shootouts and R-rated mayhem, the show gave us morality lessons in a police drama format, and while that might have worked for a completely original series, it didn't work here. Because RoboCop isn't just a cop show, it's a parody of law enforcement under corporate control, a movie that's as much about the absurdity of privatized policing as it is about gunfights. When you take out the blood, the satire, and the sheer insanity of the original, you're left with, well, just another cop show. That said, the series did manage to introduce a memorable cast of villains. Pudface Morgan, a disfigured criminal who blames the cybernetic officer for his condition despite the fact that it was his own fault. Think of him as a discount Emil Antonowski, the guy who got turned into toxic waste in the first movie. Dr. Cray Z Mallardo, a cyberneticist with an IQ of 210 and a raging god complex. Basically, if Victor Frankenstein and a paranoid schizophrenic had a baby, it would be this guy. Chayken, an OCP executive, because of course the real villains are always corporate, who worked with Mallardo to harvest the brains of homeless people for a supercomputer. Vlad Molotov, head of the Russian mafia in Detroit, hates his nickname but loves making enemies. It also introduced some new supporting characters like Gadget, a child who essentially acted as the station mascot, and an attempt to bring in younger viewers. Then there's Diana, a former secretary whose brain was unwillingly uploaded into the neurobrain, a massive AI that runs Delta City's infrastructure. This version of RoboCop wasn't bad per se, it just wasn't what it needed to be. The show couldn't be what it needed to be. It couldn't be ultra-violent like the original, it couldn't have the biting satire that made the first film great. It was neutered to fit a TV-friendly format, and as a result, it lost what made the franchise special. And look, I get it. I was 10 years old when I first saw the original film. I probably shouldn't have been watching it, but you know what? I loved it. I loved the over-the-top carnage, the dark humor, and the completely insane levels of violence. And that's what made these movies great. It's the same reason Aliens worked. It wasn't afraid to be intense, brutal, and completely insane. Kids like me didn't want toned-down, sanitized versions of our favorite movies. We wanted the real thing, the explosions, the shootouts, the dark humor. That's why the toys and cartoons based on these R-rated movies felt so ridiculous. It was like giving a kid a toy from The Exorcist and expecting them to enjoy it the same way they would Power Rangers. The RoboCop TV show had potential, but without the brutal edge that made the original great, it was always going to feel watered down. Honestly, if they want to make a RoboCop series work, they should have leaned into the ultra-violence. A proper cable TV series, maybe something like The Boys, would have been perfect, keeping the dark humor, the insane action, and the over-the-top corporate satire. But instead, they softened it to appeal to kids who, let's be real, were already watching the original movie anyway. It's like trying to make Alien into a family-friendly adventure. Oh wait, they actually tried that too, by making an Aliens animated series that never aired because someone at the studio finally grew a brain and realized how stupid of an idea that was. Look, I get that Hollywood in the 80s and 90s was obsessed with turning R-rated movies into merchandise machines, but not every franchise should be sanitized for kids. Some things are meant to be violent, gory, and completely inappropriate for children. And RoboCop? It was one of them. The TV series tried, but without the excessive blood, guts, and satire, it was never going to be what it should have been. Now, as fate would have it, we're actually getting a new movie. One that in theory could be the RoboCop we should have gotten years ago. After years of mediocre sequels, failed TV spin-offs, and that soulless PG-13 reboot in 2014 that nobody asked for, this new film claims to be a return to form. Supposedly it's going to bring back the ultra-violence, the satire, and everything that made the original work. But let's be real for a second. Hollywood loves to say the right things before completely butchering a franchise. How many times have we heard a studio say, we're going back to the roots, we're honoring what came before, we're listening to the fans? And then what happens? We get another disaster. So yeah, maybe this new movie will actually be what RoboCop should have always been. But based on modern Hollywood's track record, I'm not exactly hopeful. Who knows, maybe they fished the original script out of the trash just for today. Or maybe we're about to get another bland, CGI-heavy, nostalgia-baiting corporate product that misses the entire point of the original. Because let's be honest, trusting modern Hollywood to do anything right is a gamble. We'll see. But if they screw this up, it'll just be another missed opportunity. Thanks for dropping by the Snake Pit, where we thrive on untapped potential and lost opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, like the video, and leave your opinions in the comments, where, naturally, I won't read them. Until next time, stay venomous.